Welcome to the Unitarian Universalist Church in Eugene, where empowered by love, we transform ourselves and serve our world. My name is Bob Surintz. My pronouns are he and him. With me today is our minister, Reverend Jen Youngsun, Interim Director of Faith Formation for Children and Youth, Sarah Sauter, collaborative pianist, Suzanne Giordano, vocalist Izzy Kreka and myself, and our youth participants, Lena and Bertie, Charlie and Hawkeye, Victoria and Eli. And working behind the scenes, technical communications coordinator, Kat Johnson, along with our tech volunteer, Amy Desert.
We gather in worship to find meaning and to live more deeply. Worship creates connections within, among, and beyond us, calling us to our better selves, calling us to live with wisdom and compassion. Whoever you are, whomever you love, whatever your image of the holy, we are glad you're here. If you are visiting us today, we'd love to hear from you and invite you to fill out the visitor form as you feel called. The link is being dropped into the chat now.
Thank you so much, Eli. I'm so happy to get to see the faces and hear the voices of our youth today. And Eli, I want to just say, good job welcoming people who are here for the first time. It's always important to remember what it feels like to be brand new. And then it gives us an opportunity to ask ourselves, how would I like to be welcomed? So thank you again, Eli, for welcoming everyone, especially our newcomers. Good Sunday morning, everyone. I am the Rev. Jen Youngsun, and I am honored to serve this congregation as its new-ish minister. You know, if we haven't had a chance to meet yet, please do reach out to me, make an appointment, invite me out for tea, or do what a lot of you have done, send me an email, just letting me know what's on your heart these days. I have just a few announcements this morning. First, I want to thank everyone who helped to create a sacred and beautiful space for this year's Transgender Day of Remembrance. Kat and Ghani especially put in a lot of time and effort to help our friends at Transponder put on this community event. I want to let you all know that we're working really, really hard to prepare this building and the staff and our technology for more in-person events. I know that many of you are extremely frustrated. Local COVID rates are still in the high range, but definitely going in the right direction. But we want to also make sure that our online worship experience and our in-person worship experience are going to be as good as it can be for everyone. And finally, my regular reminder to you to read your weekly connections, because that's where you're going to find out about wreath sales, about winter solstice spiral, about Christmas Eve and the holiday bazaar. Today, actually, is the start of our virtual holiday bazaar. It's now open, so you can pre-order yummy food and handcrafted artisan items that you can pick up later at the church on December 18th. The link to that catalog can be found on our website and is also being dropped into the chat now. Thank you.
We light this chalice to remind ourselves to treat all people kindly because they are all our siblings.
To take good care of the earth because it is our home.
To live life full of goodness and love because that is how we all will all become the best people we can be.
Thank you, Charlie and Hawkeye and Molly May for doing our chalice lighting this morning. The winter holidays and their many traditions give us a chance to hold history and to decide what is still meaningful, what is still beautiful, what still brings us joy. I bet some of you have already started taking boxes out of storage. You'll be untangling lights and decorations. You'll be setting out those precious and fragile objects handed down from beloved elders. You'll tell the stories to a new generation and invite them to add their own twist to these traditions. Now, our church has traditions too. As a newcomer, I'm learning about the Holiday Bazaar and the Outdoor Solstice Festival and the miraculous way that somehow a Christmas tree just appears in the sanctuary one day. This spiritual community includes people who observe all kinds of holy days. Yet Unitarian Universalists come from Christian roots, and so Christmas has always been an important time of year for us. We celebrate the arrival of an extraordinary human being named Jesus, who fought against oppression to bring light to a suffering world and hope to a troubling place. We replay an ancient drama where light promises to break through the darkness, and we remember our common humanity. We lay down our weapons and sing of peace on earth, goodwill to all. I know a lot of us don't want to take part in the commercial frenzy of spending and getting, but if we don't take time to think about what this season means to us and our families, we can easily get wrapped up in the material expectations of this time. And that's why the tradition of Advent still resonates in UU churches. Advent is a 4-week period leading up to Christmas. Now, some devout Christians take this time for special daily devotions or fasting. For us, these days of growing darkness and cold invite us into a season of deeper living. Whether you celebrate Yule or Christmas or Hanukkah, or Kwanzaa, winter solstice, or a unique blend of each, this season is broad enough to hold all of our complicated feelings about the winter holidays. This year, each week, we're going to light a candle using this Advent wreath, a candle for hope, a candle for peace, a candle for joy, and a candle for love. I found this in the worship closet. If anybody knows where this came from, I would love to know the story. I want to know the story of all the objects, sacred objects in this place, and to know who gave them and where they came from. I want to ask Lena to help us light the first candle on our Advent wreath. Lena? And I lit the one in the sanctuary. Thank you, Lena. Put that back down. So this first candle this week is for hope. I'm wondering if everybody at home will yell out the word hope with me. 1, 2, 3, hope. You want to do that again? Okay. 1, 2, 3, hope. Thank you so much. Today is the first day of Advent, but it's also tonight is the first night of Hanukkah. And that's when our Jewish friends and neighbors celebrate at home with games and food and gifts and the lighting of the menorah. When we tell the Hanukkah story, we usually talk about the miracle of this tiny bit of oil lasting for 8 days. But you know, this is also a battle story. It's a story about fighting for the right to practice your religion, especially when it goes against everything everybody else is doing. And that's why our opening hymn today is more than just a Hanukkah song. It was written by Peter Yarrow of Peter, Paul, and Mary fame. It was written by him as a civil rights song, as well as a peace song and a song of hope. Please sing together hymn number 221, Light One Candle. I want to invite you now for a moment of silent meditation, and the bell will let you know when we've come to the end. If you have a candle close by, I invite you to turn away from all of your screens and watch the flame. And if that's not available to you, then close your eyes and imagine a flame flickering, or you can imagine the light of your heart, a soft green glow at the center of your being. There is nowhere you need to be at this moment, except here. There is nothing else to do right now, but to watch the glow, to watch the light.
Good morning. My name is Sarah Sauter, and my pronouns are she and her. And before we start this section of our worship, I'm going to post a list of words in the chat. So everybody take a look at their chat. These words represent the customs that we use to celebrate Christmas today that originally came from our pagan ancestors. We'll talk more about our pagan ancestors in just a minute. But right now, let's look for the words in the chat. Yep, there they are. See them? Gifts, candles, wreaths, carols, 12 days of Christmas, and mistletoe. We'll keep the chat box open so we can play a word search. But in this word search, instead of looking for printed words, you're going to listen for them. When you hear me say one of these words, one of these 6 words, while I talk about the Christian traditions that have come from paganism, you can type the word in the chat box when you hear it. And you can even add your first name. For example, when you hear me say the word mistletoe, type mistletoe and your first name. And you know what? Just for the purposes of having fun today, we're going to allow all humans from ages 0 to 99 to play. Don't have to be a kid. When you hear the word, type it in the chat. Okay, Christmas and paganism. What is paganism anyway? Paganism describes several earth-centered faith traditions that started from the Roman times and into the Middle Ages. and they're considered earth-centered because many of their traditions focus on the passing of the seasons. Pagans worshipped many different gods and is older than Christianity, the faith that gives us Christmas. Christmas, we know, is a celebration of the birth of Jesus of Nazareth. The traditional story describes how Mary and Joseph, Jesus' parents, were made to travel to Bethlehem, the place where Joseph was born, because the king wanted to count all his people. And he thought it would be easier to count them at the place of their birth. Easier for him, not necessarily easier for his people. Well, the early Christians found it easier to use existing celebrations and just tweak their meanings a bit to make them their own. You see, pre-Christian pagans already had well-established celebrations, ones that the people eagerly looked forward to every year. The early Christians then chose December 25th as the date of the birth of Jesus because it was already the time of the Roman festival of Saturnalia. The early Christians could plop their new Christmas celebration right on the same day as the one which everyone else was celebrating and looking forward to. Over time, they hoped people would forget the original meaning of the tradition. Saturnalia was a Roman pagan festival which occurred around the 4th week of December. The Roman god Saturn, who was celebrated by the festival, was the god of the harvest. And the Saturnalia celebration included lots of special food and drink and the exchanging of gifts and the lighting of special candles. These are all part of the Christmas traditions today. Now, the pagan peoples of Northern Europe celebrated the winter solstice through the Yule Festival, which was held for hundreds of years before the arrival of Christianity in the region. The Yule Festival celebrated the return of the sun and the lengthening of daylight in the days following the solstice. Like the Roman Saturnalia, Yule grew over time from a period of 3 days to a holiday of 12 days. And that was the source of the 12 days of Christmas. Another pagan tradition that celebrated the return of the sun included the making of a sun wheel. A sun wheel was made by intertwining branches of evergreens into a circle. These were hung on doors or laid horizontally and decorated with candles, later becoming the Christmas Advent wreath. The sun wheel looks just like the modern wreaths, which we use to decorate our homes during this Christmas season. Singing songs for the season comes from the pagan practice known as wassailing, Yule singing, or caroling. Remember, caroling includes groups of people walking from house to house singing in the special songs of the season. These carol songs praise the pagan gods and the rebirth of the sun, S-U-N. And they were gently turned into Christian songs of the season, which celebrated the birth of a son, S-O-N. And let's not forget mistletoe. Mistletoe is a plant that was used in the celebration of the pagan Yule, which remains part of our Christian tradition. Mistletoe in the pagan tradition was considered a plant of peace in ancient times. If enemies accidentally met beneath it in a forest, they put down their weapons and observed a truce until the next day. This is the origin of the ancient custom of hanging a ball of mistletoe from the ceiling and exchanging kisses under it as a sign of friendship and goodwill. Later, the tradition came to include that a young man could kiss any young girl who, without realizing it, found herself accidentally under a sprig of mistletoe hanging from the ceiling. Now let's take a look at the chat. Did we hear all the words of pagan customs that turned into Christmas traditions? Yes, we did. These words, again, represent the Christian customs that came from pagan faiths, the ancient beliefs that existed before early Christianity. At their center, all these traditions mark the turning of the seasons, the rebirth of the sun and the birth of a son. They mark the time when the earth moves from the shortest days to the darkest days, looking forward to longer, brighter days, a time of hope, a time when our ancient ancestors looked both outside at the skies and inside of themselves, to celebrate the light that sustains them. Celebrations and traditions that declare this little light, let it shine, let it shine, let it shine.
Think like a tree by Karen I. Schrapp. Soak up the sun. Affirm life's magic. Be graceful in the wind. Stand tall after a storm. Feel refreshed after it rains. Grow strong without notice. Be prepared for each season. Provide shelter to strangers. Hang tough through a cold spell. Emerge renewed at the first signs of spring. Stay deeply rooted while reaching for the sky. Be still long enough to hear your own leaves rustling.
Thank you, Victoria. Thanks for reminding us to think like a tree. They prepare for each season, don't they? In summer, they soak up the sun. In spring, they feel refreshed after it rains. And in this season of late autumn, they remind us to be still long enough to hear our own leaves rustling. Every year, the great wheel of the year turns, offering holy days for devotion, an invitation to make friends with the dark and to wait with the sun, wait for the sun. We need the turning of the seasons and the holy days that accompany them, because these days make demands on us to rise early in the morning and read, to list all of our gratitudes every night before bed, to still our minds by looking into the flame, to write truthfully from tender places, to reach out in friendship and in love. Of course, we can ignore those demands. There's no church police to make sure that you're doing your spiritual practice. Plus, the social demands are so much louder than these quieter spiritual ones. There's online shopping deals and travel plans and gas prices, juggling family expectations, meal planning. Who has time to be still, soaking in the mystery of this season when your to-do list keeps you up at night? And the winter holidays also bring up some not so happy feelings too. There's this beautiful reading in our hymnal by Dory Janine Summers that begins, "How short the daylight hours have now become. How gray the skies, how barren seem the trees. A damp and chilling wind has gripped my mind and made me gloomy too." I remember feeling like this one December many, many years ago. My former husband had just moved out, leaving our marriage after only 6 years. I hadn't really had time to feel the impact of that loss, and there was the winter holiday, the holiday season coming, ready or not. I felt like I needed to get my act together, to somehow find ho 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 and fa la la and fast. But you know what? There's no shortcut to joy. And you can't force this kind of holiday feeling. That was the year that I learned about the spiritual practice of waiting. Now, this is different from the impatient waiting that we do in ordinary life, where we want the future more than we want the present. The present, which is, as we know, the only place that life happens. Do I have the patience to wait? Do I have faith that a new life is always emerging and that the light is always shining somewhere, even when I cannot or will not see it? There's a wonderful Dutch Catholic priest named Henri Nouwen, and he teaches us that the spiritual life is a life in which we wait, actively wait, actively present to the moment, trusting that new things will happen to us, new things that are far beyond our own imagination, our own fantasy or prediction. I know that there are many who feel the gloominess of this season more than its promise. You are facing maybe your first holiday without your spouse. Maybe you're estranged from loved ones or confronting personal illness. Some of you are worried about money, looking for a new job, uncertain about your future, and I know lots and lots of you are just anguished about this ongoing pandemic. I hope that you'll remember that even in the darkness, roots are growing underneath your feet. Here's the rest of Dory Summers' poem. A damp and chilling wind has gripped my mind and made me gloomy too, but there is in you that which reaches up toward the light and toward laughter, toward bells and carolers. Our religious myth and dream of reborn joy and goodness must be true, because it speaks to all the older myths that light returns to balance darkness. Life surges in the evergreen and also in us. There are 23 days until winter solstice. There are 27 days till Christmas. The season calls to each one of us in a different way. May you all find a way to answer it, to reach upward and outward and inward toward the life you were meant to live. May it be ever so. Amen. Thank you all for sharing your joys and sorrows. So many celebrations with families and so much joy being together with people that we love. We also, of course, always send our prayers to our neighbors, our very close neighbors right across the street who are living in tents as the days grow colder. I pray that keeping them in our hearts will motivate us to more action. I want to offer you this wonderful poem by my friend Nancy Schaefer. Because she wanted everyone to feel included in her prayer, she said right at the beginning several names for the holy. Spirit, she said, Holy One, Mystery, God. But then, thinking these weren't enough ways of addressing that which fully could not be addressed, she added particularities, saying Spirit of life, Spirit of love, Ancient Holy One, Mystery we will never fully know, Gracious God, and Spirit of this earth, God of Sarah, Gaia, Thou. And then, tongue loosened, she fell to naming superlatives as well. Most creative one, greatest source, closest hope. Even though superlatives for the sacred seemed to her probably redundant, but then she couldn't stop. Oh, one who made the stars, she said, although she knew technically a number of those present didn't believe the stars had been made by anyone or anything, but just luckily happened. Oh, one who is an entire ocean of compassion. She said it and hoped no one would laugh. That which has been present since the very beginning, she said, and the room fell silent. Then, although she hadn't imagined it in this way, others in the seats began to offer names. Peace, said one. One my mother knew, said another. Ancestor, said a third. Wind, rain, breath, refuge. One child said, water. Someone said, womb, witness, great kindness, great eagle, eternal stillness. And then there wasn't any need to say the things she thought would be important to say, and everyone sat hushed until someone said, Amen.
We extinguish this flame, but not the light of truth, the warmth of community, or the fire of commitment. We carry in our hearts until we are together again.
And thank you, Hawkeye, for extinguishing our chalice here in the sanctuary. And now, go into this day and into this brand new week, holding hope as a beacon to guide your days. May you remember what the poet once wrote, that we are always hopeful gardeners of the Spirit, who know that without darkness nothing comes to birth, as without light nothing flowers. Go in peace, my friends. Go in hope.